Welcome to the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Burke, a show about ancient coins from the viewpoint of a seasoned professional with nearly 30 years' experience. Here's Aaron Burke and Mike Nottleman on the Ancient Coin Podcast.
And the sound of the gong mean once again it is time for another edition of the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Burke. I am your host and moderator, Mike Nottleman.
I'm Aaron Burke.
And that's Aaron Burke. A little explanation into our podcast, what I like to do. I am a numismatist in Aaron's family-run shop. I wanted to learn ancient coins. Aaron's an expert at them. So he decided to teach me about ancients, and here you can learn with me and watch it on our website. So on tonight's Ancient Coin Podcast, typically what we like to do is talk about auctions, but Aaron has something fairly special to talk about tonight, if I can say so. It's 221st?
Yeah.
So the 221st buyer bid sale. At Harlan J. Burke Limited.
Yeah, I just realized that I had TH instead of ST.
I saw
in
it.
Our, yeah.
221st.
It's funny, whenever I lay out the catalogs, I always have to consciously think about it because I have to put it on the banner on the catalog, and I always have to make sure that's whether it's TH, ND, or ST.
It's strange how just a little suffix makes a difference, and it's like they're not paying attention.
Well, and it's funny because years ago, the way our website was designed, it would automatically put in TH every time, and we didn't have it coded to be able to make the changes. So it changed the number, but it wouldn't change the two letters. And we got that straightened out, but it was bad because then people would say, you have the wrong two letters. And we'd be like, yeah, we know.
Yeah. That one ST or two ND, so it ends up one ND and three ND.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is our Harlan J. Burke Limited buyer bid sales. And my father started that in 1980. Even though we've been in business since 1964, he did fixed price lists all the way up until 1980. And then in 1980, he started the buyer bid sale system. And he was the very first one in the coin industry to ever do a buyer bid sale. And it's an interesting story the way that started. Did I ever tell you about that, Mike?
I don't know that you did, but I was just going to comment that even before I knew that he was the one that kind of started buyer bid, I was going to say that, yeah, that was the coin business back then. It was bid boards and it was, all this other kind of stuff. It was fixed price lists. You'd call up and you'd say, hey, I'd like this. And
yeah, my dad ran, before he started doing catalogs, he ran his kind of catalogs in Coin World.
Okay.
He would just do listing in Coin World.
It was probably my first exposure to Harlan Burke because I was an avid Coin World reader.
Yeah. And my dad was, in the 60s, that's where he was posting stuff. But anyway, there was a client who my dad was running fixed price lists, and a client who's actually still on our mailing list. So this is all the way back from 1980. He's still on the mailing list. And he told my dad, I don't want to pay the full price. And if it doesn't sell at the end of the sale, maybe you can give me a discount. And my dad said, well, why don't you just give me an offer? And if it's the high offer at the end, I'll just sell it to you for that price as long as I accept it. And he's like, okay. And that's how it started.
Oh, there you go. That's ingenuity. That's taking something and using it a different way. That's great.
Yeah. And it's in this, we've tried to maybe do some auctions, in this day, everybody's doing e-auctions all the time. And we've kind of we've tried to do a couple e-auctions and we just stuck to the buyer bid sale system. One, for several reasons. One, we don't charge a buyer's fee, which clients really like. Two, they can name their price. So if they don't want to buy it at the full price, they can make an offer below as long as we accept it. And we've sold coins at 50% under estimate. So it depends on how much we have into the coin, whether the coin's on consignment. There's variables. And I had a new client just asked me the other day, they said, how come there's no reserves right now? And I said, because we allow clients to bid whatever they want in the beginning. And so you could literally bid $5 to our website. Now we will reject it,
Right.
but but it gives us the option to hear what the market wants to pay, and then we can decide whether we want to accept it later. If you set reserves,
You're kind of
you're not
locked
gonna really
into them.
set. Yeah, you're locked into them, and then you don't really have the flexibility. So this gives us the flexibility, gives our clients the flexibility, and then we come together, because really what it is it's a fixed price list till the last day, and then it's off the highest offer essentially,
But
and
I
you can
like
buy it at any time.
But I like the mechanism that allows the market to speak. It gives you information from the other side that, hey, maybe we do have this over, or maybe the market just doesn't want this coin at this time.
Right.
And it allows you to be able to make a deal where everybody's happy.
And some people used to complain and say we were really expensive, and they didn't understand, we would, if we get a really important coin and there's not a lot of pricing parallels for you, then you just put out a buy price that you think is, strong, but that is attainable. And maybe it's based on some auction prices, but we're not trying to put record prices in. In an auction, you can get record prices, but in the buyer bid sale, we have to set that ceiling already, and then we're taking anything below that. And so, and then we're not charging a buyer's fee on top of it. And these days, almost everybody is up to 22.5%. So it just keeps going up and up and up and up.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people say it's because of inflation. That's not true.
I don't think the changes in percentage are have a valid argument for inflation.
So, one of our competitors just raised their buyer's fees, and they said it was because of inflation, and that they had to hire more employees and pay them more because of housing and everything else is going up. But the ancient coin market has been in a record levels, and so the fact that you're hiring more people means that you're prospering. And so what the real truth is that they're giving away all of the seller's fees. And so it used to be that you went on standard when auctions used to be 15% buyer's fees, way back when. They were also taking 10% from the seller. So they're making
25%.
They're making 25%. And companies like Sotheby's and Christie's, they would take the 10 and then they would take 20%. So they were making 35%.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and particularly on items that sell for large volumes of cash.
Right. Now, clients ask me, like, if you sell through us, through Harlan Burke, we usually take anywhere between 15 and 20%, but I protect the coin or the antiquity all the way through. And so I really make sure that, they'll tell me this is what I want to net, so don't go below that. And hopefully I make them more money and I make myself money. And sometimes I'll cut my commission if it's getting close. But the bottom line is that they're protected all the way through. When you go into an auction and they're giving you, let's say they give you 0% or they give you 105%, which is sometimes some of the auction houses will do.
I was amazed when I first learned of that.
Yeah. Well, Heritage does that. And that's the other thing too, is that I just had a client recently who died, and I think I talked about, he was supposed to send his collection, and then his wife ended up giving it to Heritage. And I talked to her later and I said, that's not what your husband wanted. And she's like, well, they gave her the song and dance. And they're very, what's the word I'm looking for? They're impressive, when they have their lawyers, and they're a huge company. They're
Sure.
a corporation. And so I said to her, well, I could have gotten you 105%. She's like, I didn't know they would do that. So they just came in with probably a standard level for her, and she didn't know to ask. And so it's okay to have, if you come to me and you say, Aaron, I don't want you to sell, maybe you can sell some of my lower end stuff, but I want my higher stuff to go to a public auction because I want to see if I can get crazy prices.
Right.
And
I want to get two
Heritage.
guys.
You can come to me and say, negotiate it for me. And yeah, I might figure in 1 or 2 percentage points, but I'll get you more money, and I actually will protect you and make sure that the items are reserved properly and that you're not getting screwed. And so we've done that with some of our high-end US clients on items like, where we had a client that had a $15 million collection, and it was important for that stuff to go to public auction. And we ended up taking it to Stacks because Stacks gave us better benefits for the client, better benefits for us, and they put the collection in one catalog. Heritage, what they do generally is, because they have their platinum night, is they mix it all up and it's all over the place. And most collectors who have built beautiful collections, they don't want to see their stuff mixed all over the place. They want to see it in one catalog. And so,
well, they'd like to have that catalog later to show people, see, this is my collection.
Right. And so, and Heritage, they'll do platinum night, they'll do regular night, then they'll do, if they have low end stuff, they'll put it in an e-sale, so it won't even be in a catalog. And so, there's advantages to letting a dealer negotiate for you. Whoever you work with, it's important to do that. We're getting another collection another US collection will probably take to either Stacks or Heritage, but it'll probably be Stacks. And then he's got another collection that we can sell and we'll do really well with. And so, we picked, we decided the best plan on how to best serve the client. So when we sell coins, and yes, I'm talking about high-end clients, guys, but it really, when clients bring me even cheaper coins, I'll tell them, well, you should just sell these outright to me, because you'll end up just getting out of them, and we'll work on the high-end stuff and I'll work on a percentage, and we'll try to maximize that dollar value. So I do a combination of consignment and buyout that makes sense for everybody. Mm-hmm. So, and I just work with the clients. It's just easier that way. So in any case, that was a longer conversation I wanted to give on the buyer bid sale, but oh well. So this catalog is our 221st. There's 579 ancient coins. There's 53 world coins and 86 classical antiquities in the sale. The sale has been online since this past Friday. I'm going to start laying out the catalog tomorrow, the paper catalog. So it's literally going to be up online for probably 4 weeks before I get the paper catalog out in the mail.
Hint.
So I'm not really, I have like the beginning of November as a closing date, but I might actually change that based on when we get the catalog out, because I got to make sure that the catalogs can get to Europe. So I always have like a floating between when I launch the sale and when I do the print of when the closing is going to be, but sometime in November, most likely. There are a lot of inexpensive coins in this buyer bid sale. So there are some high-end coins. I'll talk about one or two, but in general, I would say most of the coins are between $100 and $300, and there are some under 1,000. Excuse me. But the advantage to a catalog like this is that there are things in all price ranges for all clients. So the first one, Mike, if you want to bring it up, it's the Probus. And just to give you an example, I'm going to start with the lowest price piece, one of the lower price pieces in the catalog that I think is very attractive. So the coins of Probus, they're very inexpensive in general. He reigned between 276 and 282 AD. And he was very, very successful, and he made a lot of coins. Now there was debasing going on. And so even though this is an Antoniani, and even though it looks like a bronze coin, it's considered debased silver. And so what they would do is they'd put a silver wash over the coin. And so you'll see that kind of whiteness in the coin is actually the silver wash. And so some of it survives, some of it doesn't. And so based on how much silvering is there, you can change the pricing on it. But I love the reverse of this coin because it shows Sol, the sun god, driving his quadriga of horses across the sky. So it's just amazing coin, and it's $85.
You
It's
know,
not an expensive coin.
I would not have caught that to be a quadriga, but now I see it.
Yeah. Well, it's a frontal view. So
Sure.
it's,
They're going around
you
you.
know, yeah, exactly. And then you have the legend around it. And then if you look on the obverse, you'll see that the kind of the green incrustation on the coin. And that is
Their degree?
that's just incrustation. And so it's a really beautiful patina. These coins, again, most of them are going to be anywhere from $50 to $250. Occasionally we get one that's much more expensive, but it's not normal. And so I love Probus, and you can identify Probus because you can see his name is written right in the legend right there, starting at 12 o'clock and going to the right. And so, and the beauty of Roman coins is generally you can read the legends. So, and then,
and this one is graded as mid-state and still yet is under $100.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a very, very common guy. He lived to be about 50, and then he was like most people's demise. They were killed off by a mutiny of soldiers, and then I believe Carus took over, but they all kept dying after that. So Probus actually minted a lot of coins, produced a lot, and is a great, starter coin to collect for any collector. And we've talked about this before, but all of our coins in our sale have videos of every single coin.
Yes. So, would you like me to just kind of blow that through real quick, or how long is it?
No, you don't have to. We can do it on one of the other coins later. So the next coin I want to talk about, which is also one of my dad actually collected these for a while by die, and then he realized it was impossible to do. And it's the coins of Larissa. And on the obverse of the coin, you have the nymph Larissa. And on the back, you have a horse grazing. And Larissa was in Thessaly in northern Greece, and they were very well known for raising the best horses. They were very proud of their horse training. And in fact, Philip II bought Alexander the Great's horse from Thessalia, from Larissa, and paid a hefty sum for it. So,
so that's the horse.
Yeah.
So here, give me a moment to show you what I've learned so far. Let Mike show off here for a second. So, this coin is obviously silver. It is not washed. It's none of that. This is silver, and it has really, really good depth to it. It has the horse is bold and stands out, as does Larissa. And I think that's probably a lot of the reason why it's priced as it is.
Yeah, and the horse's head is off, so if the horse's head was on, it'd be worth, that's where the prices start to go up a bit more. Okay. But it's got the 3/4 facing head of Larissa. These are based on the coins we've talked about, Syracuse and the famous die engraver Kimon. And so these are based on the coins of Kimon. And some of the coins of Larissa are actually signed by the artists. And so my dad was actually collecting these by die, and he ended up having probably about 250 of them at one time. And Kathy Lorber did a study, which ended up being in Museum Notes, which was published by the ANS. And she did it on my dad's collection. And so, he did that with Carthage also, trigrams. But anyway, this one actually came from one of our old catalogs from 1995, and we got it back from a client and reselling it. So Larissa is a very, very cool coinage, not expensive, beautiful artwork. You can find them even cheaper than $12.50. And of course, if it doesn't sell at $12.50, maybe it goes for $700 or $800
or
in our buyer bid sale.
Sure.
Who knows? So moving forward, I'm going to go to the coin of Constantine IV.
And this is his Solidus?
Yep, that's lot 22. And so we bought a collection recently that was put together between probably 1915 and 1924, somewhere in that range. And a lot of the coins were bought from famous dealers from the teens. And in this case, the coin was, if you go to the ticket,
I've got it.
this coin was actually from Lyman Lowe. And he actually started in 1885 and finished around 1928, 1930, something like that. And these are his, you can see it has the lot number there, and we're able to find the catalog in the Newman Project, which is out of
Newman
WASU.
Numismatic Portal, yeah.
Yeah, the numismatic portal.
And this one
we were
has
able
the
to-
price that they paid for it as well.
Yeah, he wrote down the price, so he paid $4 for it,
$4.
and in 1921.
And I would say this
So-
is copious notes and descriptions on this envelope. That's quite
Right.
a bit.
Right. So Constantine IV is also pretty interesting. He was actually nicknamed the Younger, and and he reigned for quite a while. So he did produce quite a bit. And what's interesting about him is that there was a siege of Constantinople where the capital was. They had moved it from Rome to Constantinople in Turkey is where it was. And the Arabs were trying to siege Constantinople, and they tried for numerous years, and Constantine IV turned them away. And so he was known for, protecting Constantinople, and later he was turned into a saint by the Eastern Orthodox Church, and September 3rd is his day. And he, like most powerful emperors, he had brothers that he actually defaced them. He mutilated their noses so that they couldn't become emperor later. And then he raised Justinian II to take over from him. And so interesting time and interesting guy. But, $1,200 for a Byzantine coin. It's not high grade. It's near mint state, but it's weakly struck, and it's got a couple little hairline scratches. But to get a coin from 1921 that's not $50,000, because it's really hard to get these common coins and find them in catalogs, because you got to remember, back in the teens, they didn't have these photographs. So they're just text listings in the catalog. And it's only because we had the envelopes with the lot number and the price he paid, and then the title, and all the title, the lot number, and even the prices realized all match. So we know that's the coin. And otherwise, you wouldn't know that it came from that catalog. You would just see that it was Lyman Lowe and just say lot 448, and you would have no clue. You just say, well, it could have been from 1885 to whatever. Now we know that on the back side of this flip, it actually says New Rochelle, New York, and he moved from New York City to New Rochelle. And so we know that starting in like 1918, 1919 is when he moved to Rochelle. So then we can look in the catalogs going forward. But literally, I'd have to go through every Lyman Lowe catalog from when he got to Rochelle and try to find the lot number.
And even
There's
at
no
that,
photos.
you would never really totally be sure that you had the right coin. And in this case, you do, because of that envelope. It gives absolute provenance,
Right.
which
Right.
is that pays for itself.
And we have about, I would say about 10 or 12 Byzantine and some Greek coins, and they're all inexpensive in the sale, with either Lyman Lowe, French. There's a French guy, but we didn't have his catalogs. And then also Max Mell. We had a lot of Max Mell.
And there was
envelopes
also
as well.
Chapman in there.
And Chapman as well.
Yes.
And so, so, I raised the prices on some of this Byzantine gold more than it normally would, but I didn't go crazy. And I think it's fair. And again, to get something with a pedigree back to the teens or 20s is very unusual. And so,
And quite valuable.
That's why we put the envelopes in the photographs, because it's so cool.
And they stay with the coin.
Yeah, exactly. And then now I'm going to go to a couple expensive coins. Sorry, guys. We're going to go to the very famous shekel of Tyre. And
So this one I'm going to spin the video.
Lot 103, very popular with Christians and Jews. It was the half shekel was actually used as the temple tax. So every young male I think it was once a year, would have to give a half shekel to the temple. And we'll talk about the temple in a minute, because as the Jews were filling up the temple with gold and silver, later on it was sacked by Titus and the Romans. But we'll get to that in a minute. So the 30 pieces of silver, which is mentioned in the Bible with Judas being paid the sum of 30 shekels for turning against Jesus, is a reason why people like to collect the full shekels. The most famous shekels to collect are either going to be the first, the last, but the most important ones are the ones that were during the crucifixion. And we know that the crucifixion was around 33, 34 AD. And so coins these are all dated on the reverse. So we know exactly the date that these were minted. And so when they're the year of the crucifixion, the price goes through the roof. Typically, they're not very good metal, or they're poor quality. This one is, I believe, the finest one in existence.
I was going to say, this one is neither.
It's an amazing coin. It's got mirror finishes. It's got, maybe a couple contact marks here and there, but it's absolutely stunning. And there was a Heritage had like a starred shekel that went for like $20,000, and it wasn't even the crucifixion year. So the fact that this is crucifixion year and it is a better coin than that, I think 14,000 is actually fair for the coin. It's a strong price, but
it's a strong coin.
But we'll take bids below, and so if there's companies that can get runaway prices in slabs for 20,000 when they're only worth probably about 7,500, then if this is your crucifixion and you go into Coin Archives or Ace Search and try to find something better, you're going to be hard pressed to find anything better. It's an amazing coin.
Well, so, when you have something from the crucifixion year, that just brings more people to the party as far as interest. And, you know, this coin, I think I picked the right one to do the video on, to show the video, because it really does show the luster on the coin, which is nice. But on this one in particular, the reverse is just stunning.
It is.
There is just so much going on there in the way of detail.
And I'll tell you, I bought this from a dealer who had its price very strong, and I paid the price because I thought it was worth it. And he got it from a collector in the United States who put the collection. He actually, I believe he had 30 pieces of silver, and he bought his whole collection from him, and he put the collection together maybe 20 years ago. And so I don't think this was maybe in an auction, but we couldn't find one. So it was probably before internet days. But yeah, it's a fantastic coin. So let's move forward. The next coin is, we talked about the ransacking of the Jewish temple. Well, here, you should do the video on this one because I'm not really crazy about the photo.
Okay.
But that is the Colosseum, the Roman Colosseum. And there's, this is one of the most famous coins. I think it's the number 3 coin in the 100 greatest ancient coins. And it's probably one of the most faked coins as well, and tooled. So a lot of these end up being tooled, meaning that it'll be worn and then they scrape them with a scalpel to bring up details. This one has no issues whatsoever. It actually has a pedigree. We actually sold this in Gemini years ago, I think in 2017. It has a pedigree all the way back to 1978. It's published in Elkin's book on Colosseum Sesterce. And what's really interesting, it's also published in David Hendon's book on Jewish coins and biblical coins, because it's now considered a Jewish coin because of this. So when Titus squashed the Jewish rebellion, he went and he sacked the entire Jewish temple. So all that gold and silver that they were putting in for hundreds of years, he took all of it out and brought it all back to Rome. And then they built the Colosseum with that money. And then there in this one, you can't really see it, but there was a really high grade sesterce that had come up. And in one of the upper pediments that doesn't exist anymore, if you've been to the Colosseum, it's cut off, it's fell apart. And so you only have really the bottom half of it. And so here we show the top of it. And in one of the pediments, it actually showed a Judea Capta scene. So they were actually showing that was part of, the Colosseum building and all of that. And so the coin actually told the history in that situation.
And in this particular case, the Colosseum on this coin, it's really interesting the way they do the lip of the stadium going around, particularly the forward-facing one.
Yeah, and you can see all the people in it.
Yeah, it's amazing for the technology that they had. This is something that you would expect more in a modern coin, not something of this age.
Right. And, we put a strong price on it. We don't own it. Our client owns it. He paid, I think, around 105 or 110,000 in 2017. But there was NAC sold a Coliseum, I think in 2019 or 2020. That was fantastic. That was pegged back to the 20s. I'm not sure if it was real, but because it shares the same dies as a Paduant from the 17th century. But that's that's up for debate. But that one brought $500,000. And so if that brings $500,000, then this should be worth at least 175,000. So I tried to get the client to price it around 150 or 160, but he really felt that it should be priced higher, and I couldn't argue with him. So, and that's the beauty of the buyer bid sale, right? Is that this is a extremely rare coin. Most people can't afford. But if it was in an auction, maybe it brings 125, maybe it brings 250. It's very, very difficult. So that's the problem with the buyer bid. We have to set a price on it.
Right. Well, with an auction, it depends on the room so much.
It does, but nothing's hidden anymore. There's no such thing as a room anymore. I was bidding in Roma today, and there was people bidding all over the line, all over the world on 2 different platforms. And so there's hardly anybody in the room. It's only if you're local, really. Some people go, but I would say if you've been to a heritage auction, it's pretty much just the auctioneer and the cameras. There's no one there. So, and because of COVID, a lot of the auction houses are not charging for online usage. There's only a couple companies that are still charging 2 or 3% on top, but most of them went to free service. So you don't have to pay extra to go online and bid. And so nothing's hidden anymore. There's, I list my coins up on Numis bids. They're in different platforms for everybody to see. I do advertising. So it's very difficult to have a coin not be seen these days, I think. But anything's possible. I bought some great coins at Roma today for clients, but also for stock that I thought were great deals. And so sometimes you just have to show up to an auction. So
that's what they always said. 90% of it is showing up.
It's showing up. So that's our buyer bid. Moving on, I'm going to go to the C&G sale. Their sale is going to be between October 6th and 8th. It's the next big one that's coming up. And I just picked a couple of coins in here. They've got a lot of decent coins, but I thought this was a beautiful coin, lot 165. If you can bring that up, Mike.
Yep.
Okay. So these are the coins of Inos, minted in Thrace. And most of the coins of Inos have the god Hermes on it. And so here, no exception, you have a 3/4 facing head of Hermes. A lot of the silver have profiles. This is a dram, so it's a smaller denomination, but it's a really rare coin, and it's estimated 3,000. You can see the current price is already up to $2,250. My guess is this coin will probably bring $7,000-8,000, something like that. It was actually owned by Sheikh Al-Thani, and that's the sheikh that NAC has been selling off his material. He was the one that cornered the Greek market around 2009, 10, 2011, somewhere in that range. And then he died. I think he was killed because he wasn't that old, and he had embarrassed the royal family several times, and he was the emir's cousin, and he mysteriously died after they cut off his money for the second time. So the family has all the coins, and NAC's been selling them off the last couple of years. But anyway, this came from his collection as well, and you can see it was in the Prospero sale, which the Sheikh Al Thani spent somewhere around 15 or 16 million in that sale.
Describe the reverse. It looks to me like a loving cup or a trophy.
So you have a Canthros, that's a Greek vase that's in the left side there, and you can actually buy you can buy Canthroses all the time. And then you have a cult statue that's actually dedicated to Hermes. So a lot of the coins, when they have gods on them, they will have their representations or their idols or their animals representing them as well. So that's not uncommon. And because Inos, its patron god was Hermes, then it's not unusual for them to have a lot of worshiping attributes on their coins for Hermes. So moving on, we're going to go to the coins of Kyrene. So Kyrene, they have. I brought this up because C&G has a big run. They have 28 coins of all of Kyrene, starting with archaic types and running all the way through. So, Mike, if you just hit next lot, you can see it starts out with some archaic. And when you get to the plant, so Kyrene was in North Africa, and their main export in Kyrene was this Silphium plant. And it was actually used for medical reasons, for aches and pains. It had all kinds of medicinal purposes, and they exported so much of it that it became their main export, and they put it on all their coins. And they used it so much that it actually went extinct.
Wow.
And I had heard a few years ago that they actually found a plant again, but I can't confirm that. But I'm pretty sure they found a plant again. But it's interesting, and it's very highly collectible, and it's on their bronze coins as well. And they're not really that expensive. You can see here, this one's estimated at $1,000, current bid $650. Probably bring only $1,200, $1,300. It's not going to be crazy. And there's some that, like, look, the lot 604, I don't know if you're there or not, but it's very worn. But it's going to go for it doesn't even have a bid. It'll probably go for $400. So they're not expensive, and it's a very cool coin where you have this plant that may or may not be extinct, but that was their main export. And so it's such a cool area. And obviously this was one person's collection, and they have a whole run of them, 28 of them. So
yeah, the hits just keep on coming.
Yeah, I just think it's a really cool area to collect, and they're not expensive. I mean, can be expensive ones, but obviously in any coinage, but in general, they're for, the beginning collector can buy an example and not break the bank. So
the plant looks, the Silphian plant looks more like a fountain than it really does.
It kind of just blossoms out, and then I believe they would harvest the seeds inside.
Sure.
But in any case, they actually have some pictures of what it looked like on the internet. You can actually search it, and you can read about it. It's very interesting. So, and I even saw like a book on herbs that was done based on the ancients, and they talk about different herbs that the ancients used, and the Silphium plant was used in that. So it's cool. I mean, that's the beauty of ancient coins, right? Is that you can have extinct animals and extinct plants on coins.
Absolutely,
that were sought after, back in the day.
Sure.
So
their story goes on.
Yeah. So, we're in auction season. Like I said, Roma, first day of Roma was today. The auction, I think, there was some runaway prices, but in general, I think it was strong, but it was fair. Um, and then we'll see how day two goes. And then Gordy and Mosh's catalog came out. Kunker's catalog came out. NAC's catalog's about to come out. So there's a lot of sales that are out there right now. So check out Numis Bids or Bidder or any of the sites that you use to look up different auctions. So that's what I've got for that, Mike. If you want to go to our education section.
Absolutely. Let's go. I'd love to.
So so we talked about monsters last time, and so I
like this theme that you're on.
Thanks. But I kind of mixed it with antiquities. So some of you may or may not know, I'm an expert in antiquities, and I know antiquities as well as I know ancient coins. And you could even say I know antiquities better than I know ancient coins. So when I came to work for my father over 30 years ago, I started in antiquities, and I only did antiquities for the first decade. And then I moved into ancient coins. And I continue to do antiquities, and I'm still the director of antiquities at Harlan Burke. I have somebody who works underneath me who helps me with writing up the catalog because I don't have time, but I buy and sell most of the antiquities and pick out everything for the buyer bid sales. And I've been working with clients on antiquities for 30 years. So what I always find really interesting about antiquities is that the coins and the antiquities actually go together. And you can tell, the fact that gods on coins, because you have all these cities that were had deities that they were worshiping. And so from the Greek all the way into the Romans, and the Romans would take the Greeks gods and just change the name. So you have Aphrodite in the Greek period, and you have Venus in the Roman period. So and what's cool is that to go along with the coins that they were spending and storing, they were also producing antiquities with the same iconography. And so that's how I came up with the ancient coins are reproduced through the ancient deities. So if you go to slide number 2, yep. So Zeus, very popular on ancient coins, very, very popular. And so you have here, this is in our current buyer bid sale. I got it on a consignment. It's a really cool piece. It's actually a version of Zeus from a city in Antioch with this iconography that is only indigenous to that city. But beautiful, beautiful piece in bronze. And to the right, I picked out, there's lots of different coins with Zeus on it, but two of the more popular coins are the coins of the Ptolemies, which is the top coin. And that is a large bronze coin, and they come in different sizes all the way up to probably, I think the largest might be 60 millimeters, maybe a little smaller. They go all the way down to probably 20 millimeters in diameter. And they always have Zeus on the obverse and eagle on the reverse. And if you look, somebody just asked me about this recently, right in the center of the Zeus head, or in the center of the coin, you see a little dot. It's a little impressed dot. And there's also one on the eagle in the very center of the coin.
The one on the eagle is much easier to see, but yeah, now that I look at it, it's easier to see the other one as well.
So the thought is that they actually had a mechanism of holding the metal in place when they were striking the coin. And so it would make those holes. And that was because they were trying to strike it up, and they might have to hit it several times to strike it up. And so, and they didn't do that in the Greek period. And so you get a lot of ghosting or double striking because the dies would shift. And here you don't get as much of that because of the hole. And so it's a really cool period.
I think that technology probably helped them to make more intricate designs.
Well, it really helped them because you can get some of these Zeuses that have just, beautiful beards and really.
Well, I would say that this copper on top, the Ptolemies, is, I would say that is the classic Zeus. When I think of Zeus in my head, that's the image.
Yeah. Big Santa Claus.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And then he actually has a horn in his head. It's Ammon. It's a ram's a
Pointing
ram.
down.
It's hard to see because of his hair, but he's actually got a little horn there as well. And then below that, we have the coins of Philip II. This is the father of Alexander the Great. And Philip II used Zeus on the obverses of his coins. And because Philip II was so much into horses and was obviously getting horses from Thessaly and Larissa. And so he always put horses on the reverses of his coins. But again, very, very popular. You want to have Zeus with you at all times because he was the king deity. So very popular to use Zeus on coins. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to go with more of the common. There are literally probably 100 different deities with coins that I could get into, but I just picked some of the more popular ones and a couple obscure ones. So Athena, and here we have this really I sold this Roman bronze to a client about 10 years ago. It actually had silver inlaid eyes, it's bronze coin with its original base. It was an amazing bronze. It was like about 10 inches tall. It was just incredible. I love this. I love that statue. But you can buy antiquities, like this. They're not going to be as high a quality, but you can buy them for $200-300, depending on how nice the quality is, and then it goes way up. So, but of course, the most famous coin, Athena's on many, many coins, Greek and Roman, but the most famous is going to be the coins of Athens. And so we have Athena on the obverse, and we have the owl on the reverse, and you can see that there's a Greek vase below it that was produced there are several different versions, but they produced a lot of them in Apulia and in Campania in Italy in the 4th century BC, and they also produced them in Athens in the 5th century BC, and you can kind of tell the difference stylistically based on the iconography of the owl and the fabric of the vases. And so this is called a skephos. It's a drinking cup, 4th century BC. And again, they're not expensive. They go anywhere from, I used to sell them for $1,000 down to 800. Now I'd say they're bringing between $800 and $1,200 somewhere. But they're not terribly. If they're attic, they might be $2,500. So again, not an arm and a leg, not cheap, but not stupid. And of course, Athena always had her owl, and so you can see why the owl would be reproduced over and over and over again. So moving on, we of course have to talk about Aphrodite and Venus. And here we have this beautiful statue again with the original base. This is Roman period Venus, probably dating to the 2nd or 3rd, might be 1st, 2nd century AD.
Back when she still had arms.
When she had arms, yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
kidding.
And again, you have a lot of provincial types. So there's a coin here that's a coin of Gordian III, and on the reverse you have Athena that's kind of washing her hair. And so this city was obviously worshiping Venus at the time. And then below it, we have a Tarsus stater from the 4th century BC that was offered by NAC years ago. And you have Athena and you have Aphrodite on the reverse. So Athena's on the obverse and you have Aphrodite on the reverse.
And the Gordian coin has the dot, the placeholder.
Yeah, they did that in some of the provincial coinage as well. Some of the Greek cities did that as well. So mostly in, I believe this was minted in Cilicia, and so a lot of the Cilician coins will have that. Moving down, we've got the coins of Hercules, and we have Hercules Antiquities. So we have a Roman antiquity of this is just a little tiny applique. It might have been part of a piece of furniture. That's the thing about antiquities, is that they're could be pieces of something. And so in this case, probably it's just a little miniature, but really well done. And then we get a lot of clubs, bronze clubs, and that were used in the worship of Hercules. And so it's cool when you can get and they can range anywhere from probably 5 inches, and I've had them as big as 8 inches. And so the coins, of course, Commodus, who we've referenced before on this show, he liked to he considered himself Hercules. And so here you see Commodus showing himself as Hercules, wearing the lion skin that Hercules defeated in the first labor. And so here Commodus is showing himself as a god. And on the reverse, you can see the club. And so, and below that, we have the coins of Alexander the Great. And Alexander, he wanted to show himself as Hercules or a god. And so that's Alexander with the same Nemean lion headdress. And it was once thought that that was just Hercules, but Hercules is normally bearded. And then after they found the tomb of Philip II and saw the frescoes of what Alexander looked like, they realized that this was actually Alexander representing himself. And of course, on the reverse of this coin, he puts Zeus, right? So the gods repeat themselves over and over and over again. So moving down, we have Amazons, those sexy Amazons.
Yeah, baby.
You know, that's where Wonder Woman came from, right?
Sure.
She was an Amazon.
Jeff Bezos, too.
Yeah, and she kicked some serious buttocks. So of course, we've got an Attic vase. This is black figure because it's done in black ink from the 5th century BC. And you have Hercules fighting an Amazon. So why not? You know, and then you have a piece of redware, that little fragment. That's Carthaginian around 4th, 5th century AD, a fragment of a bowl or something. And that's Hercules again. See the beard fighting an Amazon. So
now, out of all the shards of that bowl to have survived, that's probably the most important piece of it.
It's hard to say.
Right. It's hard to know what was on it, but that is definitely important.
It definitely broke in the right spots. And but here you've got 5th century BC, and then you got 4th to 5th century AD. So you have 1,000 years where they're still representing the same iconography. So, which is very, very cool. And then you've got the coins. So here's a coin of Cyzicus. We know that because there's a tunny fish. That's that little gold coin. It's got a little counter stamp on the coin itself. But these are electrum coins, so it's a gold silver mix. And that's an Amazon on the obverse. And then we have the coins of Marina. And there's a couple of issues in a couple cities in this time period that put an Amazon on the obverse, and then obviously horses as well. And then moving down, we have Fortuna, so which is represented all the time on Roman coins. And so there's a little Fortuna statue in bronze. Here's an oil lamp that has Fortuna on it. And what I love about oil lamps is that everybody needed light. So the center hole was the fill hole for the oil, and then they would put a wick in the end, and that's what would light your home. And so everybody needed an oil lamp, and it's probably one of the most common pieces of antiquity to survive. This is a Roman one from about 1st, 2nd century AD. And they were like coins because they were pressed out in molds. They were mass produced. And so you can literally get the same mold over and over and over again in different lamps. And they were signed sometimes. So this one was probably signed because this period they signed a lot of them. The workshops would actually sign them. And so I believe that these things were also exported all over. So if you traveled to a region, you probably would take an oil lamp home from that city because it's cool, show your travels. And so, and some of the oil lamps represented the city and how they wanted to be represented. So I love oil lamps. I think they're very cool.
The oil lamps,
and they're not
pottery,
expensive.
right?
Yeah, they're pottery, but you can get them in bronze, stone, but generally they're ceramic. So, and you can get ones from going all the way back to the Bronze Age. So that are like saucer types from like 1400 BC. So it's, I had the Mark Wyckoff collection and I did a catalog and I still offer them. Like the current catalog, I have about 15 of his lamps in the catalog. And Mark started collecting in 1985 and he collected over 600 lamps in that time period.
That's a lot.
So it was a lot of lamps. I have a video, I think on YouTube somewhere, if you can find it, that shows them all on the table after I brought him home or brought him back to the office. It's a really cool video. So, and of course, then on the coins, you have, here's a gold coin of Commodus with Fortuna on the reverse. And then below that is a coin of Hadrian in silver, not an expensive coin for Hadrian with Fortuna on the reverse. More obscure guys, we have Tyche. and we have Orotes, and Orotes was a swimmer. And so the coins of Augustus will show Tyche. She's seated there with the fan. These are minted in Antioch. And then you have the swimmer below. So you see the swimmer. He was actually a river god. And so he's swimming. And here I had this bronze with the original base of Orotes swimming. And I sold that to a good client of mine years ago. And I always remembered it because it follows the coin perfectly. And I just love that bronze.
It was
And
very
then
cool.
here we have it is cool. And then here we have an oil lamp. And if you look, there's Tyche seated. And if you look below, you see the swimmer again. And so these iconography that are on the coins are almost exact on oil lamps and other antiquity. So it's cool how it really transcends across all art mediums in the ancient world. And that's what I love about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then going on, we can get into Egypt. So the god Bes, he was a dwarf that was a god, and he actually helped women in the, he was a home god, and he brought good luck to the home. He helped with pregnancies and goodwill. He was just a happy-go-lucky dwarf. And so here we have two antiquities, Egyptian period, made out of what's called faience, which was actually early glass. That's actually a crushed quartz that was mold made, then it was glazed. And depending on how much iron was in the glazing process, you can get really deep blues. The more turquoise blue, it almost looked like lapis, it is, the more powerful it was. And so you can get from tan coloration, depending on if the patina is gone or if it wasn't glazed enough, all the way to deep turquoise blue. And I like to call it the plastic of the ancient Egyptian world, because if you didn't have money for stone or other precious stones, everything was made in faience. Their necklaces, their amulets, their eushaptes, which are servants for the afterlife, they made, and they were mold made and pressed out, and then some were carved with glyphs, and so it was everywhere. It's very, very common. So, and then here we have the coins. So this is the top. You have a small coin. It's a little oval, so it's a really tiny coin, but you have this Bes on the reverse, and this was minted in Cilicia in the Greek period. So it's interesting that they took on an Egyptian motif. And then below it, we have a coin of Iberia minted in the 2nd century BC in bronze. And here you have, again, you have a Bes standing there with probably a sword. When the Romans took over Egypt, they actually started dressing up some of the Egyptian gods. And so there you'll get Besses that are actually dressed up as Roman soldiers with swords. And so and it's only done in the Roman period. And I've had tons of those over the years, and they're very, very cool. So it's funny when people take over specific areas, and then they don't want to change the gods, but they want to change them to better reflect their beliefs, I guess, or what their strengths are. So anyway, I just think that it's cool to collect antiquities with coins, and it's cool to see the story of antiquities through coins and what was being worshipped, and how the iconography spread to all different types of artwork.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really neat stuff in there.
Yeah. So, and again, I could go on and on for hours about different gods and different things, but maybe that's an area to collect different gods and different meanings, and that's what they were worshiping then, and that was what was important to them. So
well, I love the fact that you did monsters last time, and now you've done gods. So we'll have to find some other theme for you to find for next episode.
It's always tricky to come up with a nice topic, but
these are fun.
To be working through it.
Yeah, these are fun.
Be working through it. Okay. So our pearl of wisdom, we have one this week, and
yes, we do.
I kind of thought that, and I just had this, sometimes just going through the last couple of weeks before we did the last show, things come up in conversations with clients, and then I think, oh, that's a great pearl of wisdom. And so the one I had for this week was that the best dealers are not judged by their successes, but how they handle problems when they occur. And then Mike added, it's not about who has made the biggest sale, it's about how you've dealt with problematic sales, and describes who you really are as a dealer. So when when everything's peachy and everything's going well with the dealer that you're working with, and then that one bad problem happens, they sell you a fake accidentally and they don't give you your money back, or a coin gets lost and they don't cover it, and they turn on you. And so
so fast
those, yeah, so those, and obviously it's going to end the relationship with that client, but most dealers who are legitimately trying to build their businesses and trying to be service orientated now there's going to be, frankly, there's going to be pains in the asses sometimes that you can't, and at those situations you're better off just letting them go, because you're not going to win. So but
okay, while you
really
clear on
defines you as a
that,
dealer.
while you clear on that, let me say that really, look, you're going to have problems whenever there's a lot of transactions, and it is really more a matter of you showing your character when stuff starts going bad. That's when people find out who they're really dealing with, and I think that's when when relationships either end or become super strong.
I've had situations where, look, we have thousands of coins in stock. And so literally probably have 10,000 coins in stock in, different, whether you're talking about including the junk bowl and everything else, but we probably written up coins, we might have 5,000 coins. And so some of them may have been on the website for 10 years, who knows? And sometimes they get marked, they don't get marked when they're sold, they don't get marked properly on the website. And so if a 50 or $100 or $200 coin, it sometimes just goes missing and somebody orders it. What I usually do is I look for it. If I can't find it and it happens, I feel bad. So then I go to the client and I try to find something that's better and make it the same price. And so they end up benefiting, or I might comp them the shipping. There's all kinds of things that I'll do to try to make it right. And so they're, especially when it's a new client, or it's a repeat client, I want to make sure that they're happy with me, my company, and their experience. And so, I had one situation once where I didn't act properly, and I was really young. I was probably 28, and I was dealing with a guy in America, and he was buying Egyptian sarcophaguses at the time. So this is when I was just doing Antiquities, and he had seen a sarcophagus or wanted a sarcophagus from some New York dealer. And the thing was like, it was like 7 feet tall. And I just had a photo of it, and it was cut off at the very bottom. And he's like, buy that for me. And so I bought it for him. So I was just the middleman, and he paid like 28,000 or 25,000 for it at the time, which wasn't, it's not a lot by today's standards. And it came in, and I didn't even open it up. I just shipped it on to him because it wasn't even point to open it. And he got it, and the foot was missing of the piece. And we ended up getting it restored for him, and everything was fine. And then years later, maybe 2 years later, he goes to try to consign it to Christie's, and they said it was over restored. They didn't say it was in painted. They just said it had a lot of restoration, and they didn't want it for auction. So then he was like, you have to take this back and you have to sell it. And I was like, I was a middleman. I made a couple $1,000s. I bought it for you. And I didn't want a 7-foot sarcophagus showing up at the store. And so I said no, and that ended our relationship. And so I always kind of regret that, because if it had happened today, I would say, okay, I'll sell it for you on consignment. But I was young and I didn't know how to deal with it. And now I'm more seasoned. And so, I'll eat crow.
So found a better way to get to yes.
Right. And so now I've learned from my mistakes.
Sure.
So, but I was young and inexperienced, and now I know better. So again, in that situation, I would have just said, okay, send it to me. We'll get it sold for you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we'll figure it
We'll
out.
take care of it. We'll figure it
It's
out.
like sometimes
And
that's
I
the best
kind
thing
of,
you could say is we'll figure it out.
we'll figure it out.
Mhm.
And so, I had a coin recently that ended up being fake. It was bought from a dealer. I sold it for a collector. We sold it to the client, came back. I sold on consignment for the client. The client made money. Then that collector returned it because it got condemned, and it turned out it was a really good fake, and it fooled everybody.
Mhm.
And the person I bought it from, or the dealer we bought it from, was a legit dealer, and so I returned it to the dealer, and I could have gone to the collector that made money on the coin and said, hey, it was a fake. You shouldn't really make money on it. But I didn't think I was going to do that to him. So I just ate the loss on that, because what I paid for the coin and what he made on the coin was far different. And so to me, that's just doing the right thing. And he doesn't even know anything about that. And I just handled it. And so again, a good dealer will, and the collector who ended up buying the fake, I made right, like I said, no problem, we'll take it back. And it happens occasionally. Everybody sells fakes occasionally.
Sure.
And so you have to, I have to stand behind everything I sell for life. And so we try to vet everything as well as possible, but occasionally things slip through. And I'm going to show a fake probably in the next 2 weeks of one that we ended up pulling out of our sale, and it was actually pedigreed back to 1987 from NFA, and it's a fake. And it fooled, even at the time, Kathy Warber, who's one of the finest numismatists on Greek coins in the world. She was working at NFA at the day, and she didn't know it was fake. So, some coins just fool people. And I feel terrible for this client because he bought this coin from NFA in 1988, I think it was, from NFA, and NFA is no longer. So he's out the money because there's nobody to return the
right.
the coin
There's
to.
no place left to go. That's a dead end. And
That's a dead end.
And this really kind of shows, look, it's about the character of the people that you're dealing with, because at the end of the day, there is enough uncertainty about what it is that you're selling that some stuff is going to get through. It just happens. And it's not a matter of it's a bad thing that you sell something fake. That happens. It's did you know it was fake when you sold it? And there's an entirely different story. So, as long as you do the responsible thing and you try to make good on it, that's the best thing to do.
Yeah, and we don't sell a lot of fakes, so don't get stressed out thinking that all coins are fake. Most coins that show up in auction and show up in our sales are not fake. I would say 99% of them, or even more than 99%.
Probably more.
I might get 2, maybe 3 fakes a year, and we sell thousands of coins. So it doesn't happen very often. And luckily, most of the time, before the beauty of us listing our catalog online first is that somebody can tell us, hey, that's a fake, and we can pull it out of the sale before it comes out in print. And so that's the advantage we have in the way that we run our procedure, by going online first. And then, like, there was an Apollonia Ponica, it's a $250 coin, turned out to be a cast, and I had it from a client, and we pulled it. It's not a big deal.
Sure.
So, but nobody ended up buying it, and we'll put it in our black trays, and it won't be on the market anymore. But remember the fake Tardani coin we did in our last show where I showed the dies?
Yes.
Well, I actually emailed the auction house, sent them the picture of the dies, and they finally pulled the coin. So that got pulled. And so I credit NGC with helping identify that coin as being fake originally, and then giving me the dies. And then I went to the dealer and said, hey, look, you really should pull this coin, because you're going to have a problem down the road, and you don't want to have to give a refund down the road.
And to nobody's surprise, everybody did the right thing.
Everybody did the right thing. Now the problem is that it's going to get returned to the owner. The owner's going to wait 4 or 5 years, and he's going to do it again, probably. And so, we just as a community, we have to look out for each other. So if somebody at NGC like Barry Murphy reaches out to me and says this is fake, I feel it necessary, one, to pull it, check it out, make sure he's right, and then also to do the due diligence of using this platform to instruct people, and so that they can learn better. And so if a coin like that comes up again, they'll say, hey, I remember seeing that on the Ancient Coin podcast. It's a fake. And so as a community, we all are here to vet for each other and to help strengthen the industry as a whole. And
right. And you're not approaching people, like a jerk about it. You're not, hey, what are you trying to, it's an informational thing. Like, hey, look, this is what I saw. This is what we discovered. These are the dyes that they came from. You might want to check it out because we think it's fake.
Yeah. And the only reason that, I had those dyes is because of Barry. And Barry, because he went to the Smithsonian and photographed them.
Right.
And when I sent the dyes to the dealer, he said, it's because of the dyes that we pulled it.
Right.
Otherwise he said we wouldn't have pulled it.
Well, I mean, that's pretty solid evidence.
It was pretty solid evidence. And so, and I know he doesn't own it. It's on consignment. And so you don't want to have to, if it sells for 50,000 euros, you don't have to give a 50,000 euro refund 5 years later. That would be terrible,
Yeah.
And so it's not good for anybody. And so I just think that, NGC is good for doing what they do. I don't like how they grade the coins and how people profit off the stars and stuff, but they're very good at authenticating coins because that's all they do. All day long is authenticate coins.
Right.
And so they stay on top of that kind of stuff where, us dealers, we're buying and selling and trading and, sometimes things just slip through, but but if you're a good dealer, you're going to really do your due diligence before you go public with something and make sure that something is right. So you don't have to explain to your client later that he bought a fake or she bought a fake. And so, I had a new client recently say, I want to collect Jewish coins. And then I said, well, I'm not going to get every Jewish war coin, so I might show you auctions. And then they were, well, I don't know this auction house. And I said, well, I've been dealing with this auction house and this auction house for 30 years. So I know what they sell is generally authentic, and occasionally a fake goes through, but it's very rare. And so you don't always have to see the coins in person to know that there is a strong feeling that 99.9% of the time the coins are going to be fine. So the only time I ever have a problem with coins that I haven't seen in auction is when they say that it has no pedigree and it's a brand new coin type or new die type. That sometimes scares me.
Sure.
Because it could be a fake. It's not all the time that's the case, and sometimes you just have to study it in hand to know. But it's if I buy a coin that's pedigreed, I know chances are it's probably fine. If I buy a coin that I've seen over and over again and has the right looking metal and style and all that, I know it's going to be fine. But if I get something that has never been seen before, that kind of bothers me.
Well,
so you just have to go with your gut.
In more or less 3,000 or 4,000 years, you'd think everything pretty much has surfaced, but it hasn't. And that's kind of the thing. So you'd think.
No, I mean, Curtis, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, you'd think, that you'd pretty much everything that has ever been has been, and that's not always the case.
Well, they still find hoards all the time. I mean, look at England, you'll see it all the time. The hoards are found, 10,000 coins here, 5,000 coins there, and you're going to get new types, The big fear is with, like the gold Eidmar that I bought for the client, the big fear is that they find a hoard of them. So, and there's like,
I don't think that's going to happen.
It probably won't. No. But imagine if it did.
Sure.
It's like the 1933 Gold Eagle. It sold for $18 million because it's the only one that can be legally owned. But the Smithsonian now has like probably 15 of them.
Well, they've got,
because they just got 8 more back from that one family.
right. The Langboard families had, they've got theirs. I think it's a really good example of a coin like that. Yes.
So a lot of people didn't want to bid on that because they were worried, well, what if the U.S. government decides to sell 1 or 2 of them? They don't need to have 15 of them.
And if they're going to be around, they're going to eventually sell them.
And if the government sees that one sold for $18 million, I mean, they don't need to have, they look exactly the same.
Yeah.
So how many specimens do you really need? Are we really worried about melting them down anymore? No.
Not as much as they were at one time, it would seem. No, it's
Right.
like the market for $10,000 bills at one time was insane because there are 117 of them, right? And there were 100 of them in a horseshoe in Binion's Casino in Las Vegas. Well, the problem is when they tore down that casino and they dispersed those 100 of them, the people that had the 17 of them got really, really screwed because the prices just plummeted on that bill.
Right. I mean, one of the reasons why I told, now my client didn't care one way or the other, but the one who bought the gold-eyed Mar with the hole in it, I told him, I said, eventually this coin might be the only one in private hands that's legally free from any issues because it had a pedigree back to 1935. It was on display at the British Museum. Some people believe that the one that NFA sold that's in the German museum is fake. And the one that Roma sold in 2020, that was the underbidder on, that's now the highest ancient coin ever sold at 4.2 million. That might have, it was always some questions of whether it's real or not, but NGC graded it. I know there's collectors that there's experts that are in that field that all believe it's real, and there's some that believe it's fake. But there's some possible pedigree issues with it that could come up down the road. And so that could be something that possibly could have to get returned to. And this is the funny thing too, is that should it go back to Italy? If it's a national treasure, should it go back to Italy? Well, Brutus wasn't in Italy when he was issuing those coins during the Civil War, and he was never a Roman emperor. And so is it really Italian? I mean, I guess you could say it's Italian.
Who does it belong to? Then that's a pretty big argument.
Yeah, and I think he was in Greece when he was when he might have been issuing those coins, because you got to remember he was striking the coins to pay his soldiers to fight in the Civil War against Augustus and Mark Antony. And so it was basically a siege, it was basically a wartime issue, and it was a traveling mint. And so it's really hard to know who owns the coins. And so, but governments will just make up their mind, and that's that. So anyway, that's our show for today, Mike.
I'll tell you what, you packed it in today. You were pent up and you were ready to go. You fired it all tonight.
Well, we took an extra week off because unfortunately I had COVID, and which I was home for 10 days. Which I'm fine, but I was more or less staying home. I mean, I had a bad cough and stuff, but I mainly stay home just to keep my staff safe.
Thank you.
I didn't want Mike to get sick.
That's right.
So
don't get Mike sick. That's rule 1 at Harlan.
Right.
Burke.
Right. So yeah, so we had a little bit more in this show today than we normally do, but that's okay.
Hey, bonus. So so thank you to everybody who helps us work on this. Thank you very much to our editing staff, which is going to work feverishly on this episode. And thanks to all you who listened. We really appreciate what you do and the fact that you pay attention to what we do. Anything else for them, Aaron?
No, I'm
all right.
set.
So 2 more weeks. What is this, episode 17?
Yeah, we're 17.
Wow, we're creeping up on 20 really quick. So we'll see you in 2 weeks for episode 18 of the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Burke. So long, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Burke. We'll return with another episode soon. Meantime, you can join our private group on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com and search the Groups tab for Ancient Coin Podcast Discussion Group and ask to join. There you can become part of our community, where we share and discuss ancient coins, as well as the show, the ancient coin market, auctions, or just to give our own opinions on things in order to learn together. Join Aaron and Mike again soon for the next episode of the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Burke.